and welcome to this week's edition of The Assembly Line, an NES homebrew podcast. We're going to talk about homebrews, is that right?
Yes, homebrews for the NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System.
And what year did that come out?
85.
And why do we still care about that?
Because we still make games for it.
That's a better answer than I was going to give. All right, so this podcast is going to... Well, we're going to try to have some sort of structure here, but we're going to try to focus on one game a week. Is that right?
An episode. I don't know if I can keep this up every week.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you're right. An episode. Let me slow down here. So what do we have this week? What game?
This week we're going to discuss Battle Kid, but first, who are we?
Oh, I guess that's important.
Yeah.
You want to go first or what?
Oh, okay. Not really, but I will. So my name is Beau. I run Soul Goose Productions. We make, well, just like my partner here, we both make new games for the NES. And I have done... I just did a Kickstarter that just finished up. That was called Spookatron. That's probably what most people know me for. I've also released a couple other games, 0 to X and Swords and Runes, which were programmed by another fellow, but then I helped get to market. So I sort of deal with a lot of the publishing aspects, but also do programming myself. Mr. Hanley?
I am Kevin Hanley. I run a company called Khan Games. I have been making games since 2009. I've released a few games. I think I'm probably best known for Larry, which was a NES port of the original Leisure Suit Larry, and maybe my Frogger, Ultimate Frogger Champion port, and maybe The Incident, which is a box pushing puzzle game. I started out doing music, sort of transitioned into programming, and I do graphics when I have to, but I try not to because I think everyone would appreciate if better people did graphics.
Kevin has also done a lot of packaging and other sort of administrative things within the scene. He has done actually all of my design and layout for boxes, manuals, and all that. Somehow he got conned into it, because that's how people mispronounce his name.
We should just end the podcast right there with that joke.
Done.
Okay, so do we want to talk about what a homebrew actually is and isn't?
I do. I
assumed you did.
So there's a lot of confusion among people about what is a homebrew. You'll see it if you go to eBay and you type in NES homebrew. You'll find all sorts of stuff. And not all of that is perhaps technically a homebrew. It's like when you type in Little Samson, and you're like, oh, I'm going to go find a Little Samson for cheap, and you organize the prices, and you get 10-yard fight that pops up 50 times, and it says in the title, not Little Samson. There's just, it's a sales pitch.
Right.
So what is a homebrew? Well, I'm gonna pick some games that you may or may not have heard of,
okay.
And Kevin's gonna tell us sort of what they are.
You're gonna quiz me?
I kind of am, yes. And then let's
do it.
Let's do Zelda Outlands.
Zelda Outlands? I would consider that a hack.
A hack, and why? What is a hack, and why?
Because they took an existing game, the original Legend of Zelda, and actually edited graphics and in a hex editor to sort of change things up. It wasn't started from the ground up in Notepad. I don't know, for lack of a better description.
Okay, so it wasn't an original. It was a hack of an existing string of code.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's what I'd say, which is exactly,
all right.
Exactly what happens with
one
a hack.
for one.
But you will often find them thrown around. These are homebrews. Somebody made them. Somebody brewed them. Somebody whatever. But they have actually just hacked code. And so when these get cartridge, they're normally called reproductions or repros. So let's pick another.
But what are they not?
What are they? They're not homebrews. So let's pick another one. Let's pick Final Fantasy V, which is a Super Nintendo game or a Super Famicom game. Are you familiar with that one, Kevin?
I'm not, but I'm going to go with reproduction.
And more
Was
specifically,
it
let's go with
actually released?
fan translation.
Okay.
So in this one,
So it
somebody,
was okay.
yeah, so somebody, team, a very wonderful, majestic team, because I just beat the game and could not have done that without these awesome people. They took the game, edited the code, translated the text, re-put it all back together, had to expand a bunch of things. Takes a great deal of talent. Same with hacks. They take a ton of, but they're still
Absolutely.
editing an existing bit of code.
Yeah, and let's just clarify up front, we're not trying to discount the efforts of people who go through all the effort of hacking these games
Oh no.
into sometimes wonderful creations. We're just trying to simply explain the differences, just so, because people in this scene are a little bit we're sticklers, I'd say, of our terminologies. So um, we like to be considered homebrews, and we are very quick to call out when something is not a homebrew.
Well, no. If you were playing music and you were doing covers or doing original works, you'd want somebody to know which you were doing. Otherwise, your original work. Oh,
That's
and
actually a really good
that's just a
comparison.
Beatles song, right? No, no. I sort of created that. Might sound like it, might sort of look like it, but it's from my own noodle
If you
here.
can sound like a Beatles song, I think you're doing pretty well.
And there's a lot of geriatrics who'd be all over that. So another one. Let's pick.
All
Actually, let's
right.
pick one of yours here. Let's go with Leisure Suit Larry.
Are we going with the NES version of Leisure Suit
Yeah,
Larry?
tell me what it is. What is it? Where would you put that in the category?
That is a homebrew. I mean, it's a port, but it's, since I started from scratch, I redrew all the graphics pixel by pixel and started coding from scratch. So it is in fact a homebrew.
You couldn't just take the Apple code and dump it into something and it spits out an NES game?
No, it's not quite that easy.
No, no, it's not. And so with stuff like that, even the Larry, the Pitfall port has a bunch of changes to it. But even if you did a straight one-to-one as much as possible port, you're still going to have to do a bunch of creative rotations the code, yeah, because screen resolutions are different. Like if you go from Atari to NES or Sega Master System.
Yeah, I mean, the screen resolution, the NES has its own sort of stipulations and rules that you have to follow. So, stuff that was released on other systems and PC, I mean, it won't immediately translate to NES without some changes.
There is nothing like the NES architecture out there, which is pretty amazing.
And that's probably why we love it. Yeah.
That is definitely why I love it. But anyways, let's Oh, so what is a homebrew then?
Okay. I think I defined it earlier, but let's hear your interpretation of it.
Oh no, I didn't have much to add. It's a game program from scratch, ground up. You could take graphics, you could take whatever. You still have to adapt it and make it work with all new code. And so most of us, we might borrow a little bit of code here and there from the Nerdy Nights tutorials done by a man named Brian Parker, or Bunny Boy as he's known around line, or certain NestDev forums they have. But for the most part, you're programming it all from the ground up using tools like Notepad or Notepad++. You don't have to... all the tools are free and pretty basic for NES programming, but you still have to do it all yourself, and perhaps because of that.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. And people often, they just assume that we can take something from another system and magically make it work. I when I first started, I would get messages all the time from people on Facebook or PMs on Nintendo Age, asking me, hey, take this arcade game, just rip the graphics and make it on the NES. It can't be that hard, right? And I'm like,
Yeah.
well,
So
it
that's
is.
why you started that thread over on Nintendo Age.
That's exactly why I started that thread, because we were getting so many threads started, because there was that time period where a lot of those Flash games started popping up, and it's been a few years, so I don't remember any specific names for any of these games, but they were just coming out left and right, and people just assumed that we could, I don't know, take the Flash code and pop it on an NES cartridge and start playing it on the system, and it's like, that's not the way it works. I mean, I wish it was, because there would be tons of awesome games that we could play on the NES, and there are, because people like you and I have busted our asses.
Yeah. Well, I remember two of the big ones were Mega Man 9 and Mega Man 10. Everybody was like, oh, we'll just put it on an NES. It looks just like it should be on there, right?
Yeah, look closer. They're using a
There
lot
were
more than three colors.
thread after thread about why that wasn't possible. So this is part of the reason why we are quick to distinguish what's what, because when people ask us, "Can you do that? Can you do that? Can you do that?" Like it's a bigger question than they often realize. But anyways, let's look at a homebrew. We have at this point in the scene has seen cartridge releases for 12 years, and games were being made
Wow.
in the late 90s, early 2000s. So 12 years now of actual on cartridge official releases by individuals.
And people still can't get the terminology right.
No, of course not. Some people just don't care. And even some people that, there's the side of like you put something on eBay and you want to attract attention, so you call it certain things. But even some homebrewers don't care. They just make games. But when you ask them, so is what you made the same as this guy who burned a ROM onto a cartridge from a hack? And they're like, no, that's not. We do something completely different. But they don't want to call it and make those distinctions. So one of the most famous homebrews to date is called Battle Kid, Fortress of Peril, and it came out in 2010.
Would you go so far as to say it is the most famous homebrew?
Yes, hands down, yes. It's one I've seen little kids when we were working in Portland, the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, and we were working for the Retro USB booth. There were little like teenagers, like 10, 11, 12-year-olds walking up going, "Oh, look, Battle Kid, Battle Kid." I'm like, how do you know what Battle Kid is? They know. For some reason.
It's crazy.
I don't know. It penetrated the internet pretty well, and which is not exactly my scene.
The internet and beyond. I mean, I remember hearing stories of people going to Japan to visit, and they would actually see like Battle Kid for sale in these stores with posters and stuff advertising it. It's kind of crazy how it almost took on a life of
And
its
was
own.
it the first homebrew though?
Was it the first homebrew? No.
Yeah,
God, no.
exactly. But it's still it's hit that stature of like this is one of the most famous ones for a variety of reasons. And I guess we should start with a bit of the history about it. And so Battle Kid was started by a guy named, is it Sivak or Sivak? I've never been clear because I wasn't around.
I used to call him Sivak, but I believe it was clarified to be Sivak.
Okay, so Sivak started this back in 2008. October 10th of 2008, we find a thread talking about, hey, I think I want to make a game. 3 games, which was Simon Clone, Geminim, which was sort of a...
Oh,
it is
Gems?
Yeah. Obviously enough, it's Gems. And then there's Mystic Pillars, which is the... Golly, what's that? Columns from Genesis. So we did some ports first, because when you do a port, even though you have to be very creative, you don't have to come up with everything from scratch. You can sort of, take basic gameplay. You can do things like that. Even some of the art you can sort of...
Yeah, the games they already have their rules set up, so it's almost easier. You don't have to make a lot of decisions on how exactly the gameplay is going to go.
Yeah, so in 2010, he begins this platformer, which is a huge deal, because up to that point in the scene, there hadn't been any platformers, really, that were of substantial length. At least that were finished and actually released. And so it was inspired by the Flash game I Wanna Be the Guy, which was a one-hit, instant death, just brutally hard, it isn't any fun, please don't play it type game. If I had to pick a genre.
Well, apparently you're in my opinions, but apparently some people liked it.
Well, even people that liked Battle Kid were like, I don't like this other game. And so they would play it. You can watch Flash videos of it if you're not good at that type of game like me. And you can sort of see it's like, wow, this is sort of cool, but man, that's very painful. Which is fine, which is saying something, because Battle Kid is hard. Later in March next year, I guess that would have been, yeah. It was he was searching for names, came out with Microvania, Fortress Apparel, so that's the first time we see the Fortress Apparel thing. And then...
Where was he coming up with the names? Was he actually asking on Nintendo Age
So the
ideas?
Nintendo Age forums have played a central in the homebrew scene, especially after 2007 or so. The first homebrew cartridge release was done on NES World, and it was done by Membler Industries. And he released it there, and that got a certain crowd. It actually got a lot of Nintendo Age people, but starting in about 2007 with Al Bailey's Sudoku, not a port, it was original, it's just Sudoku, everybody knows sort of what that is. that's where we started to see a lot of releases on Nintendo Age. And there were also a lot of reproductions, unreleased prototypes, fan translations. Retro USB was doing a lot of prototypes, things like that. So, this Jordan. So I'm writing a book about the homebrew scene currently. And one of the most fascinating things to me on the research side is that every single homebrewer sort of way of doing things. They create their own material witness. Gradual Games, Derek, that fellow, he keeps journals. They're hundreds of pages long. I think the Nomalos one was 700 pages. Kevin Hanley, who I'm currently talking to,
I keep nothing.
He runs. If you look through the website, you don't find a material witness. But if you know where to look to see it, it'll let you see it. He actually runs extensive 100-post-long beta tests where every aspect of the game is worked out. Frank Westfall sort of did the same. He did Armed for Battle, and Julius has run beta testing. He did Super Bat Puncher. Who am I missing? I'm missing somebody big here. The point of that is...
we apologize. We apologize if it's you.
Yeah, sorry. Your games are very important. However...
Yes, we care about you a lot.
I have very few notes right now. But Civac did, his means of developing a game was to do it all publicly, or at least most of it publicly. So he would ask questions, and some people nowadays we usually confine it to like one thread that'll be hundreds of posts long, talking about all these different aspects of a game and what's developing. Thread posts for everything back in 2007, 2008. He has hundreds.
Yeah, and that bugged the shit out of me. At the time, I guess I can admit this now, and I might have admitted it during those posts because he and I never really got along. But I couldn't believe when I'd sign in and he would have another freaking thread about this stupid game he's working on, and it just bugged the crap out of me because I don't know. It's like, how much attention do you need to bring to yourself to make this dang game? But of course, now my foot's in my mouth because it turned out to be the greatest homebrew, to current date.
Oh, yeah, more or less. Well, in ways. But so there were.
But I don't have to be happy about it.
No, you don't. But there were thread posts, everything. What should I name this single enemy? What should I name the title? What should I name the title again? Wait, what should I name the title again? Which is sort of, it's really interesting for me to watch. Because the community as a whole just came together and weighed in on some of these issues that were so minute, but yet you'd get 10 different names for what this thing with an eye that shoots something should be called. And the only place you're going to see what it's called is in the manual that nobody reads. Which is...
Well, I mean, that's how games were back then, right?
But I mean, to devote that much attention and that much thought, I appreciate that, and I like it because it shows so much thought behind everything.
And it's funny, like, thinking about it now, like knowing how substantial the game was to, both the homebrew, the history of NES homebrew and just the game itself. Like at the time, it seemed so trivial and ridiculous, but it's pretty substantial. I mean, you could have had the ability to name the game that is the game of NES homebrew right now. It's crazy to think about in hindsight.
Well, that's one of the greatest parts about the scene as a whole. Most of us have incorporated a very high level of feedback, whether through private beta testing or public solicitation, criticism. You can have a role in the scene if you want to. I remember 2014, I'd been programming about a year, and thanks to a couple people, one of whom I'm currently talking with, they had sort of shown me the ropes, but I hadn't ever, and I always wanted to do this thing called beta testing. Everybody was like, oh, well, we're having a beta test. And I'm like, oh, can I get in on that? And they go like, no, the door's kind of closed. We're sorry. But then this guy...
Thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, pretty much. And then Frank, who did Armed for Battle, he just posted a ROM and was like, hey, here's this. And I played it, and I played it to death. And then I started sending him page after page after page of... At the end of it, he was like...
You?
Yeah, oh yeah, that was me. So you can find my name, and at first it was Arch Nathan. He was doing some stuff, and then he got busy with life. I think he had a kid or something like that. I guess that takes some time. And I was kind of left just doing all the testing for Frank and giving him all this feedback. And then through that process, I was telling him, well, I don't know if this feature works very well, or I don't know if that feature works very well, or I found ways to beat the game, like just easy. Just, I can demolish an army every time with this. Then every build, so I couldn't do that anymore, and it was very infuriating. But the direct level of feedback was, incorporated. It just takes that one or two people that show interest to really change the course of a game. And in the case of Battle Kid, there wasn't like one or two people. There was like 50 to 100. Like the whole community came out to support this thing because it was a platformer.
Right, and that gets people excited.
People like platformers, I hear.
They do. Now, back to Frank real quick. Where did he post his original ROM to sort of get out the word on it?
Posted Nintendo Age. I think it was in January or February of 2014. He was just like, "Here's what I have going on."
Now, being there at that time, pretty active in the brewery, I don't recall seeing him a lot before he posted that thread. Was he around before then, or did he kind of come out of
He'd
nowhere?
been on Nintendo Age since I think 2007, and he'd mostly posted about.
But was he like a presence?
No, he's still not a presence. He posts when he needs to, and then he goes and does his thing and comes back and posts. And with Arm for Battle, though, he had a pretty active thread going. It was several hundred posts long and really incorporated a lot of updates and things. So you were actually
Super
around.
nice guy too.
Oh, Frank's wonderful. Goodness.
It's funny, being in the scene as long as we've had the pleasure of meeting quite a number of the developers in the community, and he's definitely up there on the nice scale.
Yes, I stayed at his house like 2 months ago. It's just a wonderful man. Most people are very humble. They're very welcoming, and they really find it odd when people are genuinely. At least personally, I find this all very interesting, which is part of the reason why we're here.
Well, you take it a step further. I mean, you enjoy the games, but a history, sort of, person who studies this kind of stuff in depth, I think you really take it, as far as you can on different levels.
I study it because I like it though, and the people are great, and that's kind of why I do it. But anyways, I was not around. I've not been around as long as you. You were around back in the Battle Kid days. When I showed up in 2013, Battle Kid 2 was being released. Like I'd already missed everything.
Oh wow.
So what was the scene like back then?
It was a lot smaller, I think. After Sudoku came out, and I think Brian released his Nerdy Nights tutorials pretty quickly after that. It was definitely 2007 that Nerdy Nights tutorials came out, and I think that that might have single-handedly like shaped the community into what it is today. At least got as many people interested in being able to do it as possible. But yeah, back then it was a lot smaller, and I don't know, every post felt substantial. Now it's really easy because it's easy to get buried because like there's so many games coming out now. I mean, right now there are 2 or 3 on Kickstarter alone. It's crazy how much it's grown. But yeah, back then it seemed, and I assume it's the same as when you talk to your grandfather and he talks about the old days.
You're an old
when
man.
no one locked their doors and you could go out on your porch and talk to your neighbor in the morning, and things were just a lot slower back then. Back in the Battle Kid days when it was in development and coming out, yeah, it was a lot smaller. Everyone knew everyone, and I don't know, it was a good time. And I might be looking at it through rose-colored glasses or goggles or whatever the saying is, but it was a good time
We still
for sure.
all know each other pretty much, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah, but more and more people are sort of coming out of nowhere, and it's like, people sign up to Nintendo Age, and their first post is, "Hey, I finished this game. Check it out." And it's like, where have you been? Like, who are you? It's just crazy. There's
It's a
so
new
many
person
of
to
us
get to
now.
know. It's fun. And we have actually seen quite a
Get
few
off my lawn,
Kickstarters.
man.
Two my own, and then a guy named Glutok or Antoine. His Twin Dragons one just ended, and then which I need to pay for still. Oops. And Eskimo Bob is
And Lizard.
just about to end. Oh, that was like 2 years ago. That's old news.
Yeah, but I mean, if we're talking about how Kickstarter is
Oh
sort
yeah,
of helping
well, you
us
said
get our games
right
out.
now, so I figured I should clear that up.
Okay, I didn't realize that's what you're clarifying.
Oh yeah, sorry. Anyway, what was the significance of a platformer being done? Up until then, there'd been Sudoku and a couple other like puzzle-based games, but
Yeah, arcadey type games or puzzle based games, but no one, I don't think anyone had released anything that substantial as far as like in depth, story based gameplay, boss fights. Battle Kid sort of had it all, and people who grew up loving games like Mega Man, these single screen sort of non scrolling platformers. It scratched them right where they itched because it was sort of someone who considers themselves to be a really good platform gamer. It was a godsend for them because each screen you could memorize, and each screen presented a new challenge, and for someone like me, it's a little beyond the capabilities of me, being able to be good at it, but a lot of people took to it, and I mean the sales numbers sort of speak for
which is saying
themselves.
something that you're not good at it, but you do hold the world records in at least one game, I believe.
Yeah, but I mean they aren't
No.
platformers, let's be honest.
So when you say that Battle Kid was huge, there are over 550 rooms, 8 bosses, over 30 different types of enemies. There's items all along the way. It's a giant, for lack of a better word, even though people will definitely contest the existence of that term. It exists, people. It exists.
Yeah.
Just deal with it.
And it's funny because when I was preparing for this podcast and I pulled up sort of the soundtrack for it, I couldn't believe the amount of music that's in this game. Like, and we'll get into this a little later on about how
Ooh,
good of a musician
yes.
he clearly is, because there are some of the people in the homebrew community who sort of do it all, and they are damn good at doing it all. But there are 32 music tracks in this game. It's insane how much music is in this game. So I mean that just shows you right there how sort of massive this game was in
And that
scale.
is one of the neat things about the homebrew scene as a whole is that one person can do it all themselves. That variety of skills. There's been quite a few people who have done music, graphics, coding, gameplay, design, everything, even package art or packaging art.
Right. And I mean there are it's easy. I mean, maybe not easy, but it's accessible to sort of, be a dilettante and sort of do it all, but to find someone that is this good at doing it all, it's rare. And I think Jordan Sivak is definitely one of them. Brad Smith, who's doing Lizard, his music very very good. Shiru. I mean, there are people who are just extremely talented at doing it all, and it's hard to explain how good it really is, because unless you've really studied music or art or whatever, you might not be able to truly appreciate on what level this stuff is. But Battle Kid, I mean, there's a reason why it's the most popular homebrew, and he really sort of struck gold with his sort of combination of amazing music, amazing graphics, and he was clearly a good coder, because I don't recall hearing too. I think there was a bug when it first came out, where he had to release a version 1.01 or something, but other than that, I mean, it's a solid game, super solid.
December 15th of 2007, he asked about what does it take to make an NES game, and Bunny or somebody else
Oh,
replied.
really?
Yeah, Bunny or somebody else replied, the Nerdy Nights are underway. Wait for the next week. And they were at like week 7, waiting on week 8. If I have that right, I need to double check. But he said something
Okay.
like, well, I don't want to make. And within 3 years, he's making a full scale platformer, which still has not really been done in the 7 years he's since it came out, except Battle Kid 2.
Isn't that crazy? Like, he did this, so early on in the scene sort of history, and it's yet to sort of be surpassed in its vast
We're of
scale,
course
and
forgetting a key.
it's
We're
crazy.
forgetting a key game, but we'll get to that I think one of these other weeks with the Mad Wizard.
Oh, okay, yeah. For
I,
sure.
I
Now I love
I
that game.
can tell your excitement already because it's the same as mine. Which
Yeah.
Rob is another one who
Oh man,
does
I love
kind of
Rob.
everything. True
Yes.
master of his craft. But we were talking about Battle Kid this week, so
Yeah, we got to stay focused here.
and so that's a bit of the history behind it. It sort of came. I mean, it's a natural progression when you look at a couple quick puzzle games over a few months' time, some cartridge releases, because it's not just about it's not just about the programming. Going through the whole process of coding it or and publishing a game takes almost as much time at times. So he went through all of that within a few short months. Battle Kid went from kind of a random idea in October of one year to a full release in February of the year after.
So that's 5 months.
No. The year after, so that'd be like a year and 5 months.
Oh, okay.
But
That
that was
that makes me feel less bad about myself.
always. Um,
About to quit the podcast.
yeah, just give up now. It's not happening.
Just go hang it up. Yeah.
But that was till it was actually like being shipped and sold. So there was a lot of stuff in between. Anyways, what is Battle Kid when you go to play it? Can you give us sort of, we don't have a video, we don't have pictures. Can you give me some sort of description of it, Kevin?
So a platformer, I'm sure most of the people listening would know is, you control a character, and typically in a platformer, you can press a button and make him jump, and he can jump to various sort of platforms on the screen, usually, housing some sort of enemy or something to where you're having to jump around to get to different parts of the screen to beat each subsequent screen. And in this game, at least, it's separated by worlds, and I think he calls them areas, and each area sort of has a boss at the end. And in this specific game, you go around getting different power-ups that allow you to take more hits, or open up different parts of the map, or open up teleports or something like that. I don't know, is that what you were
No,
asking?
that's way more basic than I was asking, but thank
Oh,
you.
okay, then go ahead, you explain then.
Platformer is. But
Well,
if you had to
maybe
describe it,
maybe my mom's listening, you don't know.
oh, that's true. That's true. You just swore though a little bit ago.
Well, she'll ground me.
Um, yeah. So you actually mentioned one of the key defining features of it earlier was that it is not scrolling like Mega Man or Mario. It is single screen. So what does that do for the
Right.
gameplay?
Well, from a gameplay perspective or from a programming perspective?
Ah, you pick. I hadn't thought of that. Go for it.
I don't know. I think when you're designing a single screen sort of platformer, you almost have to be more creative in your enemy placement and sort of puzzle, you know, puzzle placement. I don't really know
Oh,
what you're what
that's
you're asking
awesome.
here.
I think that's one of the key things that came out from people's experiences of playing the game is that it's not a platformer like Mega Man or Mario. It's a puzzle game. Every single room, every single screen is its puzzle. There's a puzzle. There's a way around it. There's a way to get through it. And there's a couple ways usually, but you have to take each screen as its own little area because that's all you get. And so when you're playing it, and there's a lot of save points, and you will die a lot. Whatever that death music
Well,
is,
I don't know if a lot. I don't know if a lot of save points is the right term. There never seems to be enough when you're actually playing the game.
oh, I wish it saved every room, but if it saves every 10 or 15 rooms, at least you have a point of reference because there's usually a few easy rooms thrown in, and there's some harder rooms.
Yeah.
But you can map you die so often that you end up playing the same screen so many times. By the end of it, you're flying through it. Every jump,
And
every
to that point, I don't have an exact quote in front of me here, but I recall Jordan saying that when he was making this game, I think he's a little bit of a speedrunner himself.
yes.
I know he was really good at the Mega Man games, but he actually designed a lot of these rooms to where if you just run and know exactly where to jump, the enemy projectiles will miss you if you know exactly what you're doing and running full speed.
And you see that once you, I mean, as much as I hate that type of gameplay, but when you have to sit there and play the same screen over and over, you figure out, I can just blow through this. I can just run here, 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 and here. I don't even have to kill these things. I just jump right over them. Next screen, done.
Yep. And there is some satisfaction in that. As much crap as I give the game for being hard, when you've gotten to the point where you can breeze through something that was tripping you up to begin with, it's a pretty good
I'm
feeling.
not going to lie. I get no satisfaction out of getting to the next save point. It's just like, all right, well, there's one more. What's the next thing that's going to kill me? Where's it at? Which is fine. Like, that's one person's interpretation of what fun is. And it's not my type of fun, but I appreciate the fact that it's somebody's type of fun because he made it.
Yeah, I haven't told anyone this.
No.
I'm actually revealing this for the first time on this
Do
podcast.
we have confession music?
We do. Well, I'll add some music here, some really good, piano music. Before Battle Kid came out, I had a full head of hair.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this game made me bald, single-handedly.
I don't know if that's what made him bald, but just between you and me.
All right, let's move on.
We are rocking we bald in various ways, all of us. Is that a metaphor for life?
Yeah.
I don't know. So, do you find the game to be fun, I guess? We've just harped on kind of its death toll and some of the things we don't really care for. But we also talked about how great the music is and how great the graphics are. Or did we? I don't know, but we should.
Yeah, we definitely should. Is the game fun? This is a tough question because I don't think you and I are platformer guys.
Oh, how dare you, sir? How dare you?
Are you a platformer guy?
No, but I do like some of them. I mostly play RPGs. We'll just get that out in the open.
Right. Clearly, you make a new thread every week like, oh, what are your favorite SRPGs? It's like you just put a letter before RPG every other week, and I never know what you're talking about.
Did you want a TRPG, a tactical RPG? Did you want a JRPG? What about a WRPG?
Are we going down this rabbit hole?
Not yet. We'll go down this next week.
All right, but back to the subject at hand. There was some enjoyment that I got out of the game. It got hard fast, giggity. I mean, if you want to say that. But I think, learning the different, and I actually got pretty far in the game. I think I beat 3 or 4 bosses, I think 4 actually. I did give it some pretty good time, when it first came out, but I don't know, like when you get to the point where you're wanting to throw the controller, I just think that's too much. You gotta scale it back for people like Kevin.
Which is why you don't play games like Bayou Billy, I guess. Which neither do I.
I have never played that game, so actually, I guess I'll just keep that on the shelf.
I was reading about it as one of Jordan's influences for this game.
Oh.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Which another interesting thing was one of his inspiring things to make games for the NES was Al Bailey's Sudoku, 2007.
No kidding.
Seeing a game put onto a cartridge and somebody being able to make a new game from scratch caused him to learn to program. He'd already had some assembly language classes and things like that, but without somebody else sort of blazing the trail and leading the way by example, we would not have seen Battle Kid at all.
That is really interesting. Yeah, wow, I didn't know that, so I'm glad that we sort of did this podcast because I'm learning along with everyone else.
Well, who are you inspired by?
Who am I inspired by?
Were back when you got into it, back in 2000 and what? No, 98. No,
2009. Well, I probably started learning in 2008. I think that you can put me into that same camp. I mean, knowing, seeing what Al did with Sudoku and seeing him be able to release something he made, like on a cartridge, and people were buying it and people were playing it and people were discussing it. I never knew that could even be a possibility beforehand. So, yeah, I totally understand where he got the bug of wanting to, sort of go down this path of making your own games. 'Cause there really is no greater satisfaction than seeing someone sitting down and truly enjoying something that you put months and months and months of time into making. Because, I don't want to get too much into this, but there are, collectors who just want to buy everything and they stick it on their shelf and they may never even open the game. It's just a number to them. But to see someone with the joy in their eyes, the same sort of joy that you had growing up when you were, fighting Rocksteady in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I mean, it's just so much fun, and it's rewarding, man. Seeing someone enjoy it.
Interesting, because to me, as somebody who came a few years later, it was you and actually Battle Kid 2 coming out that influenced me to, pick up the NES and make games for it. So it's funny how we all influence each other, and it all comes sort of back around at a certain level.
It's really bizarre hearing that I influence someone to make games, like, because when you're, I mean, it's when you're making this stuff. I mean, me personally, anyway, like, I'm just doing it because I really want to do it. One, to see if I can, and two, like, it's so much fun to do. You don't think about sort of the impact you're going to have on a community. Like, it's crazy to hear that someone made games because they were inspired by something I did. It's awesome.
Of course, you
It's
still haven't released the game that I was inspired by. But we'll get to that
well,
some other day.
yeah, yeah. That's not my fault though. Let's be honest. My part of it's done,
Well,
man.
yeah. Well,
Come on, let me cast some stones here.
no, we're good. Let's go with this is a positive podcast.
Yes,
PP.
and I love him, by the way. Nothing but love for him.
You're gonna have to edit that whole part out. I'm sorry.
Nope, leaving it.
Yep. So Battle Kid, along with great graphics and great gameplay, has some just awesome music, as we've already discussed.
Yes.
32 tracks in this game. Some of those 32 are, the opening sequence or the death sequence or the
death music,
whatever else. Some of them back in 2002, and we would like to play one of those pieces because this music, even though it's almost a decade, close to a decade before the game came out, still influenced it and found a place within it.
So which one are you going to play?
I think the Spire one, Upside Down Spire.
Skyward? Oh, Flooded Spire.
Spire. I knew it was something weird.
All right. Let's check it out.
That was
nice.
Upside Down Pineapple Spire. What is that called? What is it called?
That's not what that's called.
Flooded Spire.
That is called the Flooded
Originally,
Spire.
the parts of that were written in 2002. Kevin was ager and now a current master. So he's going to sort of guide us through what that song consists of, I guess. I don't know music theory.
And, I mean, this song in particular maybe isn't as much as what I wanted to talk about as far as the themes that sort of flow throughout some of his songs in this game. What I think makes him sort of brilliant in his songwriting. Um, there are a lot of games where they have different music for different parts of the game, and all the music's great, and that's great. But he actually has melodic themes that he has sort of strung through all of these songs, and maybe not all of them, but um, it's almost like when you're composing for a film. um, for Star Wars, John Williams came up with themes for Leia and Luke and Darth Vader. So you would sort of hear little tidbits, when they would be on screen or whatever. Jordan actually came up with a melody, for this game, and I don't know if he actually, calls it anything special, but he puts this same melody in various ways in over 4 or 5 of these songs. And if you're not listening, you might not, tell, but who cares? Like, the fact that he took the time to think that far ahead and that ambitious to, like, he was on the level of a film composer when he composed the music for this game. And I think that deserves recognition. And it can't be discounted. I mean, it's amazing, amazing stuff.
And all of this kind of comes together to create Battle Kid, which has had more or less the most lasting influence of any homebrew to date in terms of its impact in the community, its importance for other people, its importance for gamers. Kind of seen it all with this one. I love it or hate it.
Do you happen to know any sales numbers on it? Like
You
how many it's sold?
don't know if I'm allowed to tell them.
Okay.
You might have to edit that out.
Can
as
you
well.
say it's north of a certain number?
I can say it is 10 times some of the best selling homebrews.
Okay, I think that puts it into perspective to where I wanted to go.
So
I
like
mean,
you have Battle
the
Kid,
sales numbers speak for itself.
you have Battle Kid 1, you have Battle Kid 2, and then about a tenth of that you have the next best selling homebrew.
And can you really get into why it sold as well as it did? I mean, it doesn't seem like marketing wise he did anything different than any of the rest of us did.
Well, other than being the first platformer, one of the big things I think is the title. If you look at the title and you look at a couple screenshots, what you see Mega Man. You don't see any Battle Kid Mega Man. There's that kind of play back and forth there. You buy it and you think you're buying something that you're not. You're not buying an I want to be, or you don't think you're buying an I want to be the guy NES adaptation. What you think you're buying is the next Mega Man.
And he was clearly influenced by Mega Man. I mean, you can see some of the disappearing ice blocks type, stuff like that.
Oh, he owns up to that very first thing. I mean, that's the thing is it's I want to be the guy, but it's with all of the influences of a hardcore NES gamer. So you have Mega Man, you have Mario, you have all these games kind of that. But yet if you just take it at face value, you just look at the title, you just look at a couple screenshots, you don't quite realize what you're buying until you put it in and either love it or hate it. So I like Mega Man, but I don't know if... I mean, I want to like it. And that's the thing that I hate about this game is I want to like it so much. And I just die every time. Every time.
Well, even if you don't necessarily like it, you can easily appreciate why it's as good as it is.
Always, yes. Oh, it is a good game, and it's professional. I mean, this is on the level of licensed stuff. Actually, probably the top tier, the top 25,
top tier,
15% of the licensed library. Is this better than Jaws? Yes. Yes, it is.
Yes.
Is it better than... Sure. Is it better than Yonoid? Well, maybe. Is it better than Mario?
Yeah, maybe. To some, it might be. I mean,
and if it's able to,
an argument could be made.
If it's able to be that to at least not even somebody, but quite a few people, you've done something very well. And I think he really did with Battle Kid. It was released in a couple versions. There was a glitch that was left in the very first release. So the first batch that went out was 1.0, and it has a special invisibility glitch that you can sort of access. That was I want to say it was there for the beta testers, but I didn't re-verify that because I don't have 1.0 yet. So I'm missing that. And there were also a couple limited editions. There were 33 copies, I want to say, of a limited edition that came in a bit box, and it had, a different insert and title numbered on the title screen, or on the label, one or both of the two. And then
were those sold outright or were they auctioned?
I think they were mostly given to testers. Most limited editions have been given to testers, and then in recent years, some extras have been sold off. Still, I think they're primarily built for testers. For the most of us do. I know I do. 20 to 22 of mine go to testers, and then I take another 8 to 10 and give them to, or I sell them off to, supporters, people that want in but didn't want to put in the hundreds of hours that it takes even for a simple game for testing. But I also took you as the example for limited editions and not Jordan. So there is that.
So if someone wanted to buy BattleKit today, where would they go?
They would go to eBay and pay thousands of dollars. No, they would go to retrousb.com. It has been available for 7 years almost. It is still available. I think the price is still the same, and shipping might have even gone down. I saw some early shipping complaints that it was like $12. Of course, that was to Canada.
Oh, really?
Canada. So good luck with that.
Yeah, it looks like the price is $36 right now.
He went up $1 in 7 years. He might have gone up $6 in
that greedy
7 years.
punk.
Brian is a good friend, but his business practices are
he's a good friend.
Nice. You'll see on that label, you'll see a seal of quality. You will see the 1.0. You'll see the years 2008 to 2010, and then purchase at retrousb.com. But it was originally a Retro Zone game. But if you Google image search that, you will get porno sites, old vintage porn. So don't image search Retro Zone.
Everyone's favorite.
Yeah, just go to retrousb.com. That's always fun when you're trying to do research. And yeah, that's BattleKit.
Yeah, he gets sidetracked.
No,
vintage porn.
That's not where I was going with that.
That's exactly how I wanted to end our segment on BattleKit about vintage porn.
It comes in a green shell, and we'll move on now.
Oh, and should we say that BattleKit sold so well that when he decided to do a sequel, Brian gave him permission to come up with any color he wanted for the shell.
He did.
For the sequel.
BattleKit 2 has 3 hits instead of 1 hit deaths, which for me personally is very, very generous. I cannot stress. It comes in teal, but okay.
All right, so should we talk about what we're up to now, or what do you want to do now?
Yeah, as much as this is a conversation about what other people have done, I also, if people want what we're up to and what's currently getting us up in the morning and making us stay up late at night, let's go for it. What are you working on?
Well, what's awesome is since this is our podcast, we can talk about it whether they want to hear it or not.
Actually, what's awesome about this is I can just self-promote myself to no end and not actually engage in facts at all.
All right, so what I'm up to. I've been taking a break since I came out with Scramble at the first of the year, and this happens every time I release a game. It just takes so much energy day after day to put out a game. Like when it's finally released, it's sort of this like euphoric moment, and I'm just like spent. I just sit there like in a daze because I can't bring myself to sort of get back on the wagon.
This is your 10th?
But I did, yeah, my next game will be 10 for sure. Which is, it's ridiculous. 10. And not all of them have been good games. I mean, let's be honest, but it's still. What's that?
We'll talk about Sneak and Peek a different episode.
Oh, Sneak and Peek. I still get messages from people wanting to buy it though, so there's something to be said about that. But what I've always wanted, well, not always, but what I've had to desire to do, for maybe since I released Larry, I wanted to do an original sequel for the game. there's been a lot of Leisure Suit Larry games that have come out, in the past, and it definitely went in some unique directions. But I always thought, what if I had the chance to do a part two, what direction would I want to take it in? And of course, in the past, I've been, a little flippant about using other people's intellectual properties and sort of, doing what I want to do because I want to do it. So there's going to be some changes that I'm going to make so I can, release it to where I don't have to wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat wondering if I'm going to get sued. But it's still a nice starting point to think, what is Larry gonna do? At the end of the first game, he meets the girl in the hot tub, and what happens? Where does it go from there? So I've written out what I think is a pretty good story, and I've sent it to you and a couple other people just to sort of get some immediate feedback on first impressions. But I think I'm happy with the story, and I've wanted to bring a graphics guy on, but it's just so much easier doing things yourself. You can work on your own pace. You're not waiting for someone to turn in, work. So I've started doing the graphics myself, and it's a really slow process. And I got to be honest, it's hard to find motivation a lot of time. Um, but that's what I'm working on right now. Sort of mapping out the first level. Let's just call it chapters, mapping out the first chapter. I have a couple screens drawn, but it's tough sort of finding source material and getting it exactly how I want to get it. So it's going to be a while, and who knows if it's ever going to be finished, but at least right now, that's what I'm working on.
Well, just to put that in perspective, they are very good. But you first posted a private thread on November 2nd, 2014, which was pretty much almost before you released Larry, talking about Larry 2, what you would do if you could sort of create your own sequel, which is different. It's different than what it was.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, back then I wanted to do sort of a same game from a different perspective kind of thing. Because I always like when shows or movies sort of replay the same events from different perspectives. I think that there's something to be said for the familiarity of different environments and seeing things from maybe a different point of view. But that idea sort of fizzled out because I want to say I'm not the most creative person, but I think I can be when I need to be. But that idea didn't quite take my inspiration where I needed it to, like this new idea did.
Well, that's one of the beautiful things about the homebrew scene is you make what inspires boards or companies or anybody overseeing what you're doing. You just make what comes to mind and make the things you're passionate about.
And it's funny you say that because when I was first starting out, for the first few projects, I would immediately go make a thread about it on Nintendo Age and try to gauge people's interest and their ideas and things. And people were very quick to say, "Man, why are you doing it this way? Like, why don't you do this? Why don't you add this?" And it's like, you know, maybe I don't want people to know what I'm doing because I want to do what I want to do. Like, as selfish as that sounds, like, I think for all of us, we have an idea in our head that we just need to get out, in whatever creative way we can. So, um, ever since I want to say maybe I don't even think Larry I announced too early. Like for the past few projects, I've tried to keep what I'm working on close to the chest. So when it finally is time to reveal it, it's mostly done and people can take their ideas and shove it.
Which is funny because as much as you say that, I know that both you and I also listen to good feedback that understands the spirit of what we're doing.
Well, that's the hardest thing though. And these days I think people have a better idea
Some.
of what the limitations are of what we can do and stuff. But back then, I mean, it was just so frustrating for people to come out and say they wanted this and they wanted that. And it's like, you know what? If you want that, learn how to do it and
Well, I
do it
remember when
yourself.
Rob announced the Mad Wizard, which the Mad Wizard is a game where you don't jump, you levitate. some of the first comments back were like, well, you should make it so he can jump. Well, that breaks the whole central gameplay mechanic. You can't just, like, if you're not going to get
Right.
into the spirit of the game, you're not really offering constructive feedback. And so I think nowadays, though, most of the people that we talk with understand that.
Yeah, and it's funny because there's a lot of jokes and talk about there being sort of an inner circle. And to be honest, I mean, after you've done this sort of routine to where you start a game and you start programming a game and you bring people in, like there definitely are certain people that you start going back to, time after time, and an inner circle kind of really does develop.
Yeah, kind of. But like when I was doing Spookatron, which was the game that I just did on Kickstarter, and it started last March, so like a year and a few months ago. And I used one of my old testers, Matt Bepp. He just has done wonderful feedback and criticism and advice. And then I brought on a couple new people that I'd met. I'm gonna butcher her username, but Ukurisu, and
Tanya.
also yeah, Tanya. And I brought on a guy named Jason Fleck, who both of them had never beta tested before, and they were people that had given me just a lot of support over the years, just encouragement, and I knew they were interested. They actually cared, so I brought them on, and instantly Tanya was like, well, you should have it so you can build walls. And I was like, no, I don't want to build walls. Like that's not the game I made. I didn't make it. Spookatron's a Robotron clone. There are no walls in Robotron. She's like, no, but you need walls.
Right.
And I was like, I'm not putting in walls. And so eventually she got to me and I added in blocks. So you could run into blocks. Now they weren't true walls. They were like enemies that just didn't move and looked like blocks. But it was enough. She could build little tiny mazes and she could do all sorts of stuff. And it was something that I really didn't want to do, but she understood what I wanted to do. She just also understood how to make it a lot better. And so because of that, we have blocks. And Fleck also had some similar inputs, and James Robot as well. All three of them, plus Matt, of course, all four of them were sort of my testing team. And so you do use old people, but you also take in new people because they have new ideas, and you never know like what's going to be useful. You can love your game all day long, but if it's not fun, then what good is it?
Yeah. And it's funny because when you're in the middle of working on it, you aren't really able to sort of step back and see, is this fun? So you need fresh eyes to come in and look at it.
You mostly look at it in terms of, geez, that's going to be a lot of work, or I did not build it to work like that. That's a full rewrite.
Right.
Scramble has 2-player achievements, right?
Yes, it does actually.
Oh, you put that in? That was just something I suggested, and I thought you told me to go to hell.
Well, that is a common phrase that comes out of my mouth, but I think there is an achievement in Scramble for 2 players getting, reaching some sort of score threshold.
Yes. See? Influence right there. I didn't even know it because I can't find a second player to play Scramble with. But my wife is good at 2 games.
So
that's it.
let's if someone, let's say that there's someone listening to this who has never beta tested anything, and maybe they're interested in learning more and maybe trying to beta test for either us or a home brewer out there, what should they do?
My own pathway to that, because I used to wonder about that, and it was, I'd sit there, I'd see these beta tests being done, and was like, how do I get into that? I just don't get it. And so when Frank posted his public ROM, I just sort of took it and played it and gave him feedback, and that was it. Most people post public ROMs. It's not hard to start getting involved with the scene. I mean, I have a list of people already and I took the time to make an extensive application that people can find online somewhere if they're savvy enough, and it just asks basic things like, do you actually like playing games? And a week to the time a week to the time a week to this. It's not a job. It's just, if I've had more than one tester who has started and they get about 2 days in and they just check out and they never tell me what happened to them and they just disappear and they have all of my
And
private
that
files.
happens a lot. But you're saying they should make an account on NintendoAge.com, sort of familiarize themselves with the forums, and keep an eye out in the brewery for people announcing projects.
Yeah, we're a very welcoming community across the homebrew scene as a whole, but especially on Nintendo Age. We post a lot of our stuff. You can come check it out. You can come be involved in the conversation. If you think this or that should be different, give your input. Please do it in a respectful and intelligent way. Otherwise, you're not going to, if you show up and you're like, this game sucks, I think it could be better if you did this. And it's like, I don't know if I need that kind of input.
Yeah.
Like, I get a little tired of that. I have enough people telling me it sucks. I don't need somebody who actually wants to play it to tell me that as well. Tell us why. Give us feedback. That's all.
So if you're interested in learning about NES homebrew, we've mentioned it before. There's a very good series of tutorials on NintendoAge.com that were made by Brian Parker of RetroUSB.com called Nerdy Nights, and that breaks down sort of different lessons structurally, so you can sort of take it little by little, learning a little at a time. And there are a lot of us there who will be happy to answer any programming questions you have. So yeah, if you have any interest in this at all, feel free to come hang out, join us, and just start talking. We'd love to hear from you.
And that's what it is. It's mostly us just hanging out, chatting, and making games. Like, there's not a whole lot else that goes into it. There's a heated conversation here and there, but on the whole, we're just sorry. That's perhaps too much time, but on the whole, we like people. We like games. We like to talk about games, and the Nerdy Nights are great too. What is that?
Sorry, that's my dog trying to be on a podcast.
Well, he is. His name is Bean, which is very close
Success
to my name, but we won't get into that. Just flip that in upside down. After the Nerdy Nights will teach you to make Pong, and after that, ask him what to do from there.
Yes, and then I don't reply to you for months on end, and then you continue to send follow-up questions until I finally give in.
That's exactly what I did. To be young again.
Okay, so let's are there any releases coming up that people should be aware about?
So there's actually been Battle Kid was a great platformer, as we spoke about. There is a new platformer that ended. It's called Twin Dragons. It was done by
good one.
Done by a French team called Broke Studio, which I feel like it should be like Broke Studios or Broken Studio, but it's Broke Studio. And it's Antoine, goes by the username Glutalk. Super nice guy, just easy to talk to.
Yes.
He even went a step further and has a fun picture of himself as his avatar where he's smiling. Most of us don't give you that, but he got a little hat on. Really nice when you talk to him, and he's very supportive of the scene. He hasn't posted a lot. And then a guy named Cert did the art, and another guy has done the music, and the three of them decided after the Twin Dragons demo won the Nest Dev competition for 2016, came in #1, they decided to form a little group, and they are now putting out some games together, and this is their first one. It's a full version of the demo that won the competition. You play as a dragon, and he fireballs, and it is fun platforming like you would expect.
Yeah, and it's funny because he posted sort of progress reports on Nintendo Age as the game was being developed, and I recognized right away that there was something special about this game. So I think that in 10 years, when we're looking back at sort of games of substance that have staying power, I think Twin Dragons is very much going to be part of that conversation.
Very much. It's funny though that the art for it existed before there was a game for it. Cert had posted on NestDev just some art for like mock-up art for different games that he'd sort of had in mind, but he wasn't doing any of the programming for. And so Antoine then, I think, took that art and used it for his game, and they, have gone from there. I got to look into a bit of that more, but I think that's the general flow of how that went. It reminds me a lot of Mario 2 with just the vibrant colors and the cactus, of course. Yep. The cactuses and kind of it's some sort of like centipede thing. I can't get past the second boss. It drives me crazy, even with an emulator. But there's that, and
Do you get more frustrated with that than Battle Kid?
no, because I feel like there's hope. This
There's the
I could
difference.
chalk up to playing Twin Dragons on a keyboard as the reason why I wasn't doing so good. I hope,
Yeah, I
anyways.
don't think you could play Battle Kid with a keyboard.
No,
No
I've
way.
read people doing that. I wanted to break this thing in half, and it was like, yeah, that's about right.
That's about what I feel with a controller. Anyway, what else?
What else? It's like the year of Kickstarters already, but there's one that's about to end like the next day or two, which I'm sure will be after this is actually aired. Called Eskimo Bob. It is done by a fellow who did Flash cartoons. They remind me of like a
Hmm.
Canadian Strong Bad, which I never watched, but I saw a couple scenes of. And it's sort of
Yeah, that's a
a
pretty close description.
is it? Oh, good. I love Canadian humor. I think it's just the quirkiest off-ball thing. We lived up there a couple years ago. They had this show called Corner Gas, which I just found very charming, about a gas station in the middle of nowhere, and that was the whole show. Like they were just in a gas station. But these Flash comics that uh, they used an NES style. Now there was no game to go with them, but they were just done as if they were an NES game, and it starred Eskimo Bob and Alfonso would poke a walrus with a stick, and Eskimo Bob would do things, and I don't know, they were just kind of like short and goofy. And then 10 years, or no, more than that, quite a number of years later now, he decided to go ahead and make an actual game to go with that. And so the graphic for the NES, when you see them on a system, you're like, geez, couldn't clean this up a little bit? But he's not, because that is the graphics that were used in the show. So there were some people
Hmm.
that were criticizing it. And it was like, no, you're missing the point. Like, this is why it exists.
Yeah, and I got a lot of that with Study Hall because I tried to develop it to look like, stick figures on a sheet of paper. And if, when you're just looking at something, without knowing and judging its artistic merit, you get a lot of flack for stuff like that. So I totally I feel his
Yeah,
pain.
you have to take that inner aesthetic in. And so with Eskimo Bob, though, it's a scrolling platformer of sorts, but it's actually a puzzle game. You have to solve a puzzle on each level, but it'll scroll back and forth, and it's very well done. Both of these guys, Antoine with Twin Dragons, and he's not the only one with Twin Dragons. There's the other two. He has posted over the last couple of years different demos. He had like a scrolling demo, or he had some. It's a very off-ball tattoo RPG, and I don't. It took me going back.
Would you call that a TRPG?
Yeah, yeah, that would be a TRPG. And it took me looking back through his posts to realize all that he'd done, because he would pop in, post about something, and then disappear for like 3 months. But he was working that whole time. But with Twin Dragons, he just sort of like popped out of the blue and was like, here's a whole game. And same with Tomas with Eskimo Bob. It's like, hey, here's a whole game. And like these guys had never really posted before. And that's awesome, because they're new people to the community that I think will be around for years to come. And we didn't ask for and we didn't expect. And they're just here. And we get to enjoy all their work without all the pain of watching them grow. No, I'm kidding. We like watching that pain. That pain is good. Good stuff.
And I think there's something to be said about more and more new people joining and releasing games because as old and secluded and closed minded as I want to be, um, if more new people didn't start showing up, I would be playing the same types of games, year after year. But what's great about homebrewers is they're making projects they want to make, and they are definitely not projects typically that any other homebrewer would want to make. So you really get some amazingly diverse content coming out, and Eskimo Bob definitely fits that mold.
Yeah, it's nothing. It's not like anything else anybody's made since, and probably won't make again. And Kevin mentions
And that's
his
awesome.
earlier days before 2014, so pretty much from 2007 to 2012 or 13. There was only like two, maybe three, maybe four releases a year, and then in 2014 we saw
Hmm.
like 20 releases. In 2015 we saw like 25 releases. In 2016 was about the same. Hasn't really gone above that, but what we've seen is some of the older folk kind of went their way, and they made their dream, they made their game, and they got busy with life. They had kids, they got a new job, they moved, whatever, But then some new people have just shown up out of the blue, and it's kept it alive. It's kept it going, and that's why I don't think people say things like, "Oh, the homebrew scene's done. Like we've hit it all." Battle Kid was 2010. You know, where have you gone since then? But it's still about people realizing their dreams and just making what they want to make. And the releases are getting even better if you look close enough. Maybe not as popular, but definitely more polished. And then with other recent projects, I guess a major one that we have not mentioned is called Tailgate Party. And we are
Oh
going.
yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. It's phenomenal. It's creative. Uses peripherals, and we are going to talk about it next time. So just to tease you,
Yeah.
I think it almost needs it to be the featured game. It's that creative.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's funny because there are some games that are starting to come out that are using those old peripherals in ways that maybe they weren't intended to be used, you know. So it's very awesome to see people be creative with that stuff. So I can't wait to get into to talk about that game.
And and we're gonna the fellow who did our intro song, our little jingle, is called Zai Thomas Ragonette. He has been an influential
Yes.
chiptune
Thank you, Tom.
musician for the last decade and more. Uh, he has done the music for Kevin. You know better than I do.
Well, on my personal projects, I know he's done The Incident, and is going to be doing the music for Isolation when it's done. But he's released, I think, 4 albums of his own now. The most recent one being named actually 4.
Or
Um,
album 6, not 4. He likes to be confusing.
but it's the 4th physical
Oh, yeah, it's
release,
just
right?
gonna make it even worse, isn't it? Yeah, Thornbury, Silicon Sky.
Okay.
I'm missing one.
Yeah. But thank you, Tom.
Yeah, he's done. You might recognize his music
Yeah.
from a lot of the 8-bit Christmas 2013, or not 2013s, but Christmases, including 2013.
I think 2013 is when he took over from me.
Oh, is it? Oh, well, okay.
So,
That would make
well
5
done
years
with
worth
that
of
slip of the tongue.
4 years worth of releases. Anyways, he's a very good
Yeah.
musician. His most recent album is called 4, even though it's his 6th. And the song that we are going to sort of play to send you off with is called Floating. It was written, and it's about his experiences of floating in LA.
All right. Well, we look forward to seeing you all next time.
Thanks, guys.
Take it away, Tommy.